listen to what your employees are asking you for. For those sandblasting company, they just wanted an executive to come see their work. So fly out and see the work. They weren't asking for a Christmas party. That wasn't what was meaningful to them. Although the executives could be like, oh, we're throwing this huge Christmas party. Don't you like this? That was such an aha moment to me. And it wasn't because I was bad or that the owners are bad. I was really trying to create something fun for our people. But I just never asked them what they thought was fun. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast with me, your host, Scott Snider, back with Renee from our Thought Leadership Council and our SEPA community. So you saw Renee and I talk a couple weeks ago on the Exit Is Now podcast about vision, and we're going down this path this season of the Exit Is Now podcast, talking about what really builds value creator cultures, not just from a business owner's perspective, but really across the entire company, from business owner to executives to middle management, all throughout the entire workforce. We were laughing pre-show, Renee, that one of my favorite buckets of these four that we're talking about is rhythm, and I always say it's kind of like the jive of the company. And for me, and I think maybe even more deliberately, and why I wanted to talk to you about rhythm with vision, is because it's the way in which we communicate all that vision stuff that we talked about an episode ago, right? It's the way in which we talk about the big rocks, the 10-year vision, the 1-year strategy, the company and P&L. It's how we bring people together. It's where culture, or in the EPI world, what we would call social capital, really comes to life. What I find, though, and I told you some stories about friends and business owners we work with here in the Northeast Ohio community, is that they don't have the rhythm. I mentioned on our last show, when I was meeting with one of my friends who owns a business with their dad, she was like, Scott, your dad keeps talking to me about this like company-wide meeting that you have at 10 a.m. every Monday. She's like, can you tell me more about that? And I was like, yeah, we just get all 50 of us together at 10 a.m. on a Monday. It allows people to kind of get into the office and get settled in. And then we go through big rocks, metrics, but we also have like a silly question of the day that everybody, from across departments can laugh about, and we have people stand up and tell like why they answered that way. And then we usually have some learning lesson. It might be a book review. It might be something from in the field, like we spoke at a conference and we had these experiences. But it's just something that brings together. It's a part of the rhythm. It starts our week out. It's honestly one of my favorite meetings of the year. And in true value creator form, Renee, this year they made me stop leading that meeting.
Excellent.
Right? Everybody says that. I'm
Then
always
you know
like,
it's
what
working.
a bummer. But no, I think that, it's something as simple as that. We're going to dissect rhythm and use EPI as an example of rhythm, and use your expertise to kind of guide us along the way. But why do you think, to kind of start with rhythm, why do you think people are lacking rhythm in their company?
A lack of discipline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like over time, people have become increasingly distracted, and life and the world and existing in, personal life and professional life, there's a lot of noise, a lot of information, and people are kind of overwhelmed.
Sure.
And as a result of that, they tend to lack focus, and there's a lack of focus around what's important and the ability to prioritize energy. We then have a result where we have a lack of discipline. And the discipline, we all know discipline's good for us. And we know it makes us healthier. We all know we should not drink alcohol, sleep 8 hours a night, drink X number of liters a day, work out 30 minutes, X number of days. But how many of us have that optimized? Very few.
Very few.
And so that is just a non-business example of a lack of human discipline. And as a former athlete, one of the things I miss about that is I knew when training was, I knew when the game was, I knew what the pregame and the postgame was. And so there was all this structure that made it easy for me to be disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
And I was incentivized because I would get positive feedback from my coach, I would get acknowledgement from my team. And so I would ultimately feel better, perform better, and get more of what I wanted, which was social acceptance.
Mm.
And so we know discipline's important to get the results we want, but a lot of us are just out of alignment, overwhelmed at an individual level. And then you add all that human volume of people together, you have organizational complexity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when an organization tries to instill some discipline, there's a natural pushback. It's like trying to get my kids to do their homework.
Yeah.
Right.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
And so they'll yelp about it, they'll complain about it, but then they get it done. And I always say, do you feel better now? They're like, yeah.
Mm.
And what is the result with your grades? They go up.
Exactly right.
So when you are a leader or a business owner, instilling discipline is hard. You're probably struggling with that yourself. So it needs to be a collective commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to keep it simple. You'd be crazy not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be consistent. But the root cause I've found is just a lack of collective human discipline widely. That is no fault of any one person, but it's become a collective norm.
Okay.
And so changing that is like reorientating a cruise ship. And that's why you have to keep it really simple and start small.
So that's a great segue, right? So if I'm sitting here and I'm a listener, I said, well, yeah, I guess I maybe lack like that story I just told in our opening. Yeah, Scott, I don't have that company-wide meeting either. So what are some things that as owners we should be creating inside of our business that create that jive and that rhythm? It could be the way we communicate, the meetings, the workshops, the whole stuff that we do there. But I also think it's the dashboards that allow us to understand data. How do we start?
Mm-hmm. Rituals are important.
Okay.
So rituals in how we communicate, rituals in how we measure, rituals in our feedback systems, our planning mechanisms, all these things. The more ritualistic we are, the more we are likely to habitualize them, normalize that behavior. What's really important in rhythm is consistency. So if and when we start to bring in disciplined activities such as meeting pulses, scorecards, and so forth, we need to have a commitment that once it's in, it's staying. And when that commitment is modeled at the leadership level, despite pushback, we model it there and then we take it to the next level and the next level. It has to start at the top. We need to walk the talk. Operating systems are powerful to habitualize value creator behaviors and stabilize rhythms because they bring essential key components of a company together. And so the vision doesn't sit over here and then the meetings over there and the data over there and the people structure. They come together in one cohesive system. And when we systemize all the predictable elements of running a business, we can humanize the exceptional. That's an Isidore Sharp, Four Seasons quote. And so I found I'm systems obsessed. I like to make things go faster and smarter and sustain over time. I've always been curious about how things work. My dad was a mechanic.
Okay.
And so I grew up thinking in a very mechanical way about how things work. And through academics and athleticism, I learned the systems. I was a straight A+ student in the top 3% in Australia. And people say, wow, you must be smart. And I'm like, no, I just cracked the code. I cracked the code of the system. I understood what teachers needed and wanted and how to get it to them. I understood how to fill my gaps. If you stay after school, teachers will give you time. I made friends with the smart kids in the class.
Yeah.
And so I cracked the code and I just worked that system. I worked really hard, but the more I did it, the easier it got. And so maintaining straight A+ became normal for me because I built that capability through a very systematic, disciplined approach. I would say a lot of it came also, my dad grew up on a dairy farm. And dairy farmers are very ritualistic. They need to milk the cows at a certain time, feed them at a certain time. And so I grew up with a lot of positive habits. and that helped me perform. And then it was a natural crossover to business. I realized we needed set meeting times to sustain that consistent behavior, clear agendas, measure fewer data points, but consistently on a weekly basis. And as we started to implement these disciplines through the business operating system model in my company with my former husband, we started to get better results.
Hmm.
And what's really cool also is that we were able to create more of a forward momentum in the business, and behavior was able to be managed better, progress measured better, and issues addressed earlier. A lot of issues in companies go unaddressed because they don't have the mechanisms to get solved.
Hmm.
And what I found was when we got really good at meeting rhythms and data, the issues started to come to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
We could see that we had a copier and IT company. So we could see that we had training issues when our callbacks per technician per week increased above a certain baseline.
Mm-hmm.
We could see the need to hire people proactively before we burnt out our staff when technician calls per day, per week got above a certain level. So the data helped us make good decisions and address issues in a timely way. And the meeting pulse gave us the forum where they could be solved and actioned.
Mm-hmm.
The meetings created the accountability to take action on solving those issues, and the data gave us the spotlight on what was or was not working.
So it goes hand in hand, right? Like you can't just sit in a meeting to not really talk about something, right? The data almost powers the meeting in a sense, right? Because we're analyzing that and making decisions. Is there things that you would recommend, these key performance indicators, smart numbers, critical numbers, whatever operating system calls them?
Mhm.
Is there some that you would advise business owners to track on a regular basis with their teams?
Yeah. Well, I think that there is a scorecard for every function
Okay.
of the business. Where I like to start with my clients now is what's the owner's monthly scorecard? What do they need to know from an outside looking in with a buyer mentality from the owner's box?
Okay.
What does the visionary and integrator or the CEO and COO at the highest level, the co-parents of the business, need to be focusing on? What does the executive bench need to be focusing on? And then what does each function need to focus on? And you might think, holy cow, that's a lot of data. But what we found in business operating systems is less is more. You can actually track a lot of data points and have higher accountability and action around addressing those data points if they're owned by the right people.
Hmm.
So we don't have to have all data sitting in the hands of an owner or the leadership team. Functional level accountability around data is really important. Ultimately, staff want to know if they're winning or not.
Yeah.
They want a pulse on where they're at. Anytime I talk with a business owner about their underperforming sales team, I'm like, tell me about your data. And they're like, well, we look at team results. I'm like, so you don't look at any individual data on a weekly basis. You have no idea how many calls people are making, how many follow-ups they're doing, how many after sales calls. They're like, no. I'm like, you'll never get you what you want until you know and communicate what success looks like at the individual level. You create an aggregate and overarching view of that at the sales level. You create an accountability culture when everybody can see. I worked at an accounting firm, KPMG, for a number of years. Then I went into recruitment. And recruitment is a highly competitive, very sales driven industry. And I worked the temp desk. So you were constantly placing people, turning people over. It was like a call center all the time. And we had all the stats up on the board. And every single day you closed a deal, lost a deal, whatever, you had to go up and put it up on the board. And we had complete transparency. And our culture became extremely competitive, very driven, very motivated. And at the same time, when we saw one of our colleagues, because we had good team health, when we saw a colleague underperforming, we would be the first to step in at the peer level to say, hey, Scott, you're sucking. What's going on? Because we had that team culture. There was a team incentive. Individual contributors were recognized, and we had this culture that was healthy and competitive. So if we want to motivate people, we need them to understand what success looks like. And so scorecards at each function, right down to an individual scorecard, every person in a business needs to know their 1 to 3 numbers. and they need to be able not just to report into the company on that, but take accountability for that themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody really likes to be told all the time what to do and how to do it. But when they're set up for success, if you're the right fit for this seat, you follow this process, the data you should be achieving is this. So if you're not achieving that output, either the process is not working
Mm-hmm.
or you're not putting the right inputs. And we can make it so easy for people to perform.
Mm-hmm.
But without the meetings and the metrics, the rhythm every 90 days, every month, every week, we actually are setting everybody up to fail.
Mm-hmm.
So
go back to the meeting side of things too, because when we go down this path and we start talking about this, people go, Scott, I'm already in a bunch of meetings. Like, do I need more now? So if you go into a company and they don't have a rhythm, what is the suggested rhythm that they should have? Is it weekly? Is it bi-weekly? Is it once a day, the old school stand-up huddles? Like, what is that? What is I get? Or maybe the question is, what is too much?
yeah.
When does it get overkill?
When I go into a company that's tried a bunch of different operating systems and amalgamated a lot of things, a lot of the disciplines they do away with are, goals and metrics. But one thing they keep doing is meetings.
I know.
And,
Yeah.
and I'm like, it's the biggest time waster
Yeah.
there is.
Yeah.
And Lencioni,
Yeah.
another great book, Death by Meeting,
Yeah.
really shines a light on the importance to really interrogate your reality around meetings. What's the meeting for? Who should be in it? In my world, if there isn't a specific need for that meeting and everybody who's in it is involved in it, then it doesn't happen.
Hmm.
Every meeting has to have an agenda, the right participants in it, the right areas of focus, and it needs to activate execution.
Right.
The meeting's sole purpose is to drive execution, to remove barriers, make key decisions, manage certain metrics that ultimately drive action.
Hmm.
If that meeting doesn't have the intention to do anything other than talk, and it's not going to tie to action, in my world, it shouldn't happen at all.
Hmm.
We do need a rhythm. We talked about this word, and I thought a lot about this. It's like a heartbeat. A meeting rhythm is like a heartbeat for the business. It needs to be consistent, steady, healthy, and ongoing. And if you get that science right, it can be game changing, keeps all the circles in the business connected. My simple recommendations are to stop any meeting that doesn't have an agenda. Stop any meeting that doesn't result in direct execution-based outputs. Stop it. Then the basic principles I use in business operating theory is to recognize we need to do annual planning and quarterly planning.
Mm-hmm.
So planning rhythms are important. Inside of the 90-day window, we need to do a couple of things. We need to make sure there's a weekly rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
So we're tracking metrics, solving issues, taking action in a proactive way. It also allows us to keep prioritizing energy and measuring progress. So the meeting pulse on a weekly basis is important. And once a month, my guidance is that leadership team come up and look at the monthly results. So they're doing a budget to performance review and in some cases, calibrating actions in alignment with the budget. So at a minimum, weekly rhythms, every level of the business, monthly review at the leadership level, and a quarterly planning cycle as well. Some of the basics. And each of them have a structured agenda. They start on time. They end on time. They follow the agenda. Everybody's clear what done looks like. And they come out of that meeting in execution mode.
Exactly right. So me and you have been driving on meetings, but when we read Walking to Destiny, my dad's book, my dad is passionate about workshops, not meetings.
Mm-hmm.
So as a SEPA as well, do you share that passion? And then maybe can you dissect what's a meeting and what's a workshop? Because in our business, I certainly have a meeting, but I would say that when we read Walking to Destiny, I think what my dad is getting to is what you're actually talking about, is that meeting is on time. It is structured and all of that. So talk to me about that, because a lot of our listeners are saying, wait a second, Renee's over here talking about meetings, but I thought it was workshops, not meetings. So now I'm confused.
Yeah, good question. I think he's really tried to stand out from the concept of meetings and get clear on those aspects of the discipline behind a good meeting. So I think if we define a good meeting in those ways, the language Chris would use would be workshop.
Okay, cool.
When I would say when I'm talking about meetings, I'm talking about the rhythms inside of a company.
Mm-hmm.
And what's also important to say is that doesn't mean nobody communicates ever outside of that meeting.
Yeah,
So inside
right.
of the business, we want to break down barriers to communication, get connectivity, get on the same page. The meeting rhythms inside the company from an operational standpoint are important to keep the circles connected, solve issues, measure progress. When I'm working with a business owner, I use that concept workshops. I practice the value acceleration methodology. So when I'm in Discover Gate, it's workshops. When I'm in Prepare Gate, it's workshops. And those meetings, those workshops are either with the owner and advisor or owner and key operators, and they are really working the master plan that we've created.
Mm-hmm.
So the roadmap to succession. It's multifaceted, it's dynamic. There are elements of insights and education that I'm bringing in those meetings, and they need to be super structured so they stay on track.
Sure.
The advisor's time is very expensive. A lot more than mine. I'm coming back as a lawyer in my next life. I would say we need to keep them structured, particularly when we're working with advisor teams. The structure is very, very important. Clear outputs are key. I use meeting software to help me run these workshops and keep them on pace and keep accountability going. When I'm having the owner and key operator, because not in every case does my owner really immerse the entire leadership team in the exit planning journey.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's key operators such as the COO and the CFO. And they, again, are in a consistent rhythm of workshops with us, working, again, that master plan. And then my time with the owner is also workshop orientated. So that's very structured with designated end game, outcomes, and the importance of that agenda and the consistency is key. So in my work, I absolutely use workshops. In operating companies, what frontline staff and people are most familiar with is this concept of meetings.
Yeah.
But getting clear with them what good meetings and bad meetings are, and reducing the admin load and cost of a heavy meeting culture in a business is important. So we take a less is more approach.
Are you a business owner seeking to unlock the true potential of your enterprise? Look no further than the second edition of Christopher Snider's revolutionary book, Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. In this updated edition, Snider presents proven strategies for maximizing your company's value and accelerating growth. Whether you're aiming to sell or simply want to ensure long-term success, this book offers a blueprint for building a thriving, self-sustaining business. Walking to Destiny isn't just another book, it's a game changer, backed by Snider's own experience as a successful business owner and as a CPA. This book bridges the gap between business owners and advisors, guiding you towards financial freedom. But don't just take our word for it. Hear from those whose lives have been transformed by its insights. One satisfied reader raves, "The best guide for transitioning out of privately owned companies. I recommend it to all business owners and advisors." Another praises it on its focus for maximizing business value, calling it their, quote, principal tool for educating owners. Ready to take control of your business's destiny? Visit walkingtodestiny.com now and use code EXITISNOW to claim your free copy of Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Make the moment perfect by seizing this opportunity today.
Hey there, business owners. Are you ready for a game-changing opportunity? Introducing the 2023 National State of Owner Readiness Report. Over the past decade, this groundbreaking research has reshaped how we view business ownership and exit planning. This report isn't just another study, it's a deep dive into the evolution of business ownership. It shines a spotlight on the crucial intersection of business attractiveness and owner readiness, revealing the undeniable impact of preparation on achieving successful transitions. With younger generations taking the reins, exit planning is taking on a whole new perspective. Education and awareness about preparing for the future have never been more crucial, And with financial readiness leading the charge, there's a clear opportunity for growth and learning. But here's the kicker. The report shows a surge in exit planning education and understanding, yet many still lack formal transition teams, highlighting the essential role of comprehensive support. So who's got your back? Trusted advisors have evolved from CPAs to financial advisors, making a decade of significant change in support networks. Ready to take the next step towards a successful exit? Dive into the Exit Planning Institute's 2023 National State of Owner Readiness Report and start shaping your legacy today. The future is knocking. Are you ready to answer? Discover your readiness level at 2023ownerreadiness.com and take the first step towards a successful and significant exit.
So I want to go all the way back to the start of this Exit is Now season. We were talking about mentality. And so this is why I think they go hand in hand. I'd like to get your opinion here, is that I think that we could have really good rhythm, right? And we have vision. But when you get into this meeting, if you can't have great conversations because you don't have the mentality of, we call it like putting it on the table, right? I think too many people go like, we have this great, like it's on time, it's on agenda, but then me and you leave the meeting and you didn't like the decision I made, so you go have a meeting after the meeting. So you go talk to Donovan and go like, I don't know why Scott would make that decision. That was like totally bull crap. We should have done this, this, and this. And Donovan's going to say, well, why didn't you bring that up in the meeting, right? And you shoved it under the table when it should have been put on. So in my opinion, you could have great workshops, great meetings, but what we don't talk enough about is the mentality of the people going into that meeting has to be X, Y, and Z. And it's something that we've talked about with Fred and with Ben in the opening episodes of this season. What do you think about that, though, right? I mean, do you agree that you have to have a certain mentality going into there to make that meeting actually effective?
Absolutely. What's important is to establish an environment of safety and a healthy culture. And so it's safe to be wrong. It's safe to be the unpopular voice in the room. I love some of the work of an author, Susan Scott. She wrote a book called Fierce Conversations. And it helped me really learn some techniques to get more of the whole human showing up and having their say. So I feel like it's got the mentality is a byproduct of the culture, the value system, and getting that right, ensuring you've got the right people in the room for that meeting, doing the work to elevate the health of that team. Lencioni does great work around this, but actually teaching the technique of naming the root issue, discussing it openly in a balanced way, and solving it specifically with a tie down to action. That is a technique that we need to learn as an organization, and we need to foster in our teams. The operating system that I've had most experience with is EOS, and one of the greatest takeaways from that is the IDS, issue solving track. Why I like that is it teaches the method of solving issues. So you can have the healthy team, the good core values, but we still need to learn that skill. And it's a game changer, that skill, when you can take the time as a team to sit with what is the real issue? Why is the 5 whys even? Why is that an issue? Why is that an issue? And get to the root and then move into the discuss and create a space where everyone's voice is heard. As Susan Scott calls this the beach bowl, all the colors of the beach bowl get brought to the table. We identify why that's important, because if you don't have your say, you could leave valuable insights off the table and we could take action and it could be in the wrong direction. So it's a real need for you to speak openly, even if you're the unpopular voice in the room. I'm used to being that voice. And then we conclude it with a solve. So what's the solution here? Now, that solution may take weeks to execute on, but everybody needs to know who owns that solve and what's the first step. When they come back to the meeting next week and they said they did that to do that first step, we are confident that it's good. We don't need to treat the meeting like Monday.com, where we track all the tasks and the deliverables. It's a nightmare. So we want to really get good at naming the issue, getting to the root, discussing what we're going to do, making sure everyone's heard, tie it to a solve with accountability, and that's where the execution happens. If we don't do that, we'll be like, oh my goodness, that was such a great meeting. We talked about all these things, and guess what's going to happen between now and next week?
Nothing. Right.
And that's when frustration and tension builds, trust goes down, health goes down. So the execution is important.
Absolutely. So I think what we're talking about in rhythm, we've certainly read in books, right? Whether we're doing it in our companies is to be known,
Mm-hmm.
but we understand, like, look, there's got to be like some meeting cadence. Has to be some numbers that are being tracked. We should talk about things. We should be able to execute. We should come out with game plans. When I talk about rhythm, I go a little bit deeper, perhaps, into what I would say are like our employee engagement activities. Right, it's a part of who we are. It's a part of the jive. It's a part of accountability and alignment. It's a part of it's a whole part of the recipe. So at EPI, we do things like our annual EPI team bonding day, right? So we get everybody out of the office, we break them down into the teams, and we do anything from throwing axes to go-karting to paintball, right? And there's usually kind of an Olympic kind of theme to it where everybody participates in both, and you add up the points, and a team wins. We also follow that day with all of our families. So you can bring your significant other, you can bring a guest, you can bring your kids, and it was actually really cool this past year. We probably had like over 100 people at this thing, right? If you think about it, if everybody brought a guest, we'd be at 100 right out of the gate. And so that's a part of the rhythm. But it's also something like our pre-retreat. So right before the executives go on the executive retreat, we have our pre-retreat. What are some examples, or what are your thoughts around implementing an employee engagement program that's not just about the execution of the business model and making the company more successful and more long-term significant, but it's also about bringing people together?
Mm-hmm. I think it's one of the greatest investments in the intangible human capitals that we can make. That
Right.
social capital. Uh, Creating a focus on the fact that every human in your organization matters is
Hmm.
important, and that the whole human can show up creates such deep bonds of connection in an organization. It's like magic. People call it
Yeah.
magic sometimes, but it is something that is defensible during, due diligence and through the transition process, because it can be measured in feedback and surveys and so
Mhm.
forth, staff tenure and so forth. So the real outputs are demonstratable. I think that it is the highest return of investment uh, approach that we can make. The number one, I've studied a lot about relationship breakdowns,
Mhm.
having been through some of them myself. And I've learned that the number one root cause of relationship breakdown, marital or, with your children, is disconnect.
Hmm. Sure.
And so that closing that gap and creating opportunities for people to connect more deeply rather than across the table, but shoulder to shoulder in the go-karts or whatever the activities might be, really creates deeper connection. And then people feel more deeply intrinsically connected to the organization because they connected to their peers.
Mhm.
They help out more, they go above and beyond, they stay longer because they're part of something bigger. I think now we have a very disconnected and isolated society.
Hmm.
Uh, a health crisis a few years ago affected that significantly. A lot of social fabric broke down.
Hmm.
And I was reading and watching a documentary. It was called Join or Die.
Okay.
I think it was Robert Putnam.
Okay.
He wrote a book called Bowling Alone. And he discovered a lot through social science that the downturn in human well-being, health crisis, and economic decline at a social level has been directly correlated back to this anti-joiner culture. People stopped going to church because they could listen on their phone. They stopped going to the bowling league,
Yeah.
the association for this. They stopped stepping out of the comfort of their home and their individual isolation. They stopped going out into society. And it's broken down a lot of bonds of connection. And so as a result, we are in a steady state of social decline. The way to turn that around is create, in my mind, workplaces that model where what people might have experienced in bowling leagues or going to church or the PTA or whatever the case may be. We make it frictionless, we make it easy, and we're forming those bonds of human connection. Human well-being goes up.
Mm.
Mindset improves. Human health goes up. You find that you'll have fewer unscheduled days off, fewer mental health days, fewer short-term disability claims because people's human well-being is safeguarded and prioritized in the business. So it goes very deep.
Mm.
And I think that we as company owners and organizational leaders have a mandate to step up to the plate here. It increases our value. It also helps us achieve our goals, but it's frankly the right thing to do with our teams.
Well, I think it's also the next generation of workforce too. And so it might have been different maybe in the 80s or the 90s, but when you look at 2026 and you look at people in their, say, even in their 20s coming out of college, I think they're looking for that. They're looking for connection. They're looking for community. And the fact of the matter is, we work a good chunk of our lives. And so they want to show up to places that have that. So I think if you fast forward 10 or say even 20 years and business owners are embracing a value creation, a value acceleration centric mindset for both an owner and employee, the businesses that trade for outlier multiples or that succeed through multiple generations and have big time lasting legacy provide those types of things to the what I would say the employee of the future.
Mm-hmm.
And the employee of the future is somebody coming out of college that's 20, 21, 22 looking for that. And if you don't have that we were talking about this in the previous episode about vision as well. And I don't have this in my business. I'm talking about the connectivity of having like an in the field workforce and then an at home workforce.
Mm-hmm.
I used to have it in my landscaping company, right? I had an office staff
Yeah.
that were very much different than the people planting the tree and plowing the snow. Or we have a relationship with Legacy Motor Club, and I always find their business interesting because they have 132 employees. They have what they call the commercial side of their business, which is the business people.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have the competition side, which is the driver, the pit crew, the strategists, the tire changers, the truck drivers.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have that, right? So I don't have that in our business because everybody's kind of hunkered down here in Cleveland, right? We see 50 people basically every day. And I can only imagine whether it was our previous episode talking about having a collection, a connected vision, or this rhythm that brings people together. So whether they're at the racetrack miles away on the other side of the state, or right in there, or the people that are actually sitting at home in Charlotte for the NASCAR team, how that rhythm is bringing people together and connecting people. I just think that you had me starting to think about that as you grow a larger company. And most companies, or not maybe most, but there's a lot of companies that have an infield staff.
Or multiple locations.
Yeah, and multiple locations, right? How important that the rhythm and the vision might be for those organizations.
Yeah. I find that we need to work harder to make it so simple to stay connected. And the number one thing that I find my work does in the business improvements lane is reduce organizational complexity.
Mm-hmm.
Reduce barriers for communication, connection, the ability to solve issues. So the more complex the business gets with scale, whether it's inside, outside, multiple locations, or sheer volume of people, the harder we have to work to uncomplicate the business.
I know.
The vision has to be ultra clear. The values and the culture, ultra clear. And we need to create this one vision, one voice, one team mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And it really requires confident, clear leadership and really good habits throughout the business, because culture is a byproduct of certain things being habitualized, the values and the behaviors that align with those values. And so the rhythms just make it easier to systemize those behaviors that give you the culture that you want, which ultimately then creates intangible value, really great outcomes, and builds strong, resilient, and scalable businesses. So the vision and the rhythm must connect. We have to have alignment with the vision. We have to have your accountability and rhythm. And in doing all of that, the number one objective has to be to reduce complexity.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we can have stronger connection. And some of the work like Lencioni's done, I talked about previously, the silos, politics, and turf wars is about breaking down barriers
Mm-hmm.
between departments and teams. I've had a lot of hospitality experience as well. And there's this front of house and back of house.
Yeah, there's another example.
Mentality,
Right.
like the chefs hate the servers and the servers hate the chefs.
Yeah.
I worked many years in hospitality myself. And so rather than normalizing that, we need to figure out why that is the case and work actively to solve it. We had a photocopier dealership,
Mm-hmm.
and photocopier salespeople are a very unique breed of people. I don't know if you've ever met one, but they are very unique, and it's not for everyone. It's very hard to hire and develop a photocopier salesperson. They're very ego-driven, very like they have to pound the street, knock on the doors. They're relentless.
Yeah.
They're always squeezing a dollar here or there. And what we found was our service people hated the salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
And the salespeople hated the service people. The salespeople thought service were complaining and lazy and didn't want to take care of their customers. And service people felt like the salespeople had unrealistic expectations, set them up to a failure in the field. When we interrogated that, we discovered that we had a meeting rhythm breakdown and a process breakdown. We fixed the process. We discovered we didn't do any pre-install checks.
Mm-hmm.
Did we literally have the right product pieces that would go into the field appropriately? Were the power points, power outlets, the right voltage? How many stairs are on site? So we started to do these pre-install checks that actually help bridge the gap between sales and service. And then our service people were set up to succeed. And they got quicker installs, less bottlenecks, and we had a meeting rhythm to consistently address any issues and have this feedback model so we could learn from each other. We broke down what was many decades of a widely normalized disconnect between those functions because we interrogated our reality and we got people in the room together. So the culture that the reason why we were able to do that is we'd done the work around core values. And we'd normalize our core values, standardize them. And so when they went into those meetings, they had the core values in mind. We set ground rules around how we behave, how we address issues, and we got more of what we wanted. We also started to do more company events, Christmas parties, dinners, golf days. And we noticed that as those events went up and engagement with them increased, our ability to solve issues became so much quicker. Because we saw each other as humans.
Well, there's a human experience that's happening, absolutely.
And it's hard to hate people up close. It's a phenomenon.
Yeah.
And so with all that, we have to align. We can't just do social for social's sake. Donut days, yoga teacher in is not going to solve underlying root issues, but a balance of the engagement activities and good rhythms in the business really is a net benefit for all.
So we're coming to the top of the episode again. And so we get down, this is typically where the last question I get, so I want to see how you would answer it is, all of that sounds great, Scott, but how much does that cost? So when you're advising owners, is it a 2% of revenue? Is it what? How do you budget for company holiday parties, team bonding days? It's just become a part of the budget and you'll see the scale? What is the recommendation that you have?
My first response is, what is the cost of inaction?
Okay.
And what does inaction look like? What are the real risks? Staff turnover, churn, sick days, us not getting our numbers, and so forth. And so when we understand the cost of inaction, we have a readiness and a willingness to take action. Then we need to right size that with our scale of business, the complexity in our accountability model, inside versus outside. And it needs to be, first of all, I say, let's start with the habits and the disciplines in the business. Because it's all good to have a great time, but come back and we still make it hard inside of the business for people to perform. It's kind of like it's out of alignment. So we start with the habits. we build the trust, we invest here, and we get feedback. And I would say less is more. Don't try and impress everybody. Take a less is more approach, get the feedback, ask what worked, didn't work, what we want more of, what we want less of, and let the data lead the way. As an advisor, I say you don't need to have all the answers. You need to ask the right questions, bring the right data to the table, and follow the data.
Totally.
And so when I met with that question is understanding the implications of inaction, getting to the table ready to take action, bring the right people to the conversation, typically leadership team and key longstanding employees to table the conversation, get the input, and do what is budgetarily responsible,
Yeah.
but is done with the intention to skyrocket social capital. And
Yeah.
so if it's done with the right intent, the right people at the table, the organization will always find their way. I've seen companies simply implement a golf day, and people are typically talking about that for a year.
Yeah.
I've got stories from one of
Yeah.
my clients last year's golf day, and we're still talking about it. Like
Yeah.
how many bowls I lost because I'm a really
Yeah.
bad golfer. Don't
Yeah.
invite me to golf.
Yeah. Shoot, there goes my golf partner.
Right. But right sizing it and also listening to what is meaningful to your people. I've got a very decentralized in-field sandblasting company, $30 million sandblasting company. And their people are out in the field on site, these infrastructure builds. So what they found when they asked is that they wanted a key owner executive to come and visit them. And all it cost them was a flight and a meal out, and they were raving about it. They felt like they mattered. So consult the team, right size it for the business, take a less is more, gather the data, and just build. And social capital is one of those things that you need to nurture and feed over time. It doesn't build instantly, and having a donut day is not going to solve that.
You touched on something that is what we kind of call, what we're calling this, right, is you said listen to what your employees are saying and want, right? Like, and I've had this experience, right? I'm always like my friends know me as a life is short, do cool shit kind of guy, right? So it's like I like having fun, right? And we work really hard, so let's have fun. So I am known to, or I used to be known to, on a random day, pull up a party bus and take everybody out to lunch, right? And that lunch isn't an hour; it's like 3 hours, right? And there goes a whole day, and it was unannounced. And what I thought was really cool and fun, and I was trying to do a nice gesture of like, hey guys, like let's just get out of the office, super random, take a deep breath, wasn't what they wanted because they were like, dude, I had sales calls scheduled. Now I feel bad because the owner of the company is telling me I need to go on this. Other people, to your point, like we don't drink alcohol and this is not our scene. Or just generally like, dude, I hate going out to lunch and going bowling. Like I don't want to go bowling. I suck at bowling. But and I had that experience and I went with less is more, right? So our big thing, we might have like a summer shuffleboard tournament, but we have that team bonding day. And so we're not doing a lot across months anymore. It's like hunkered down to maybe a summer month and then our fall time together. But I really like that less is more. And what I sum that up to be in my big life lesson that I opened the season with was I realized in 2020 that I created a company that was all about me and not about we. And you touched on it a bunch of times throughout as you talk through this entire episode. And a lot about rhythm is listen to what your employees are asking you for. For those sandblasting company, they just wanted an executive to come see their work. So fly out and see the work. They weren't asking for a Christmas party. That wasn't what was meaningful to them. Although the executives could be like, oh, we're throwing this huge Christmas party. Don't you like this? That was such an aha moment to me. And it wasn't because I was bad or that the owners are bad. I was really trying to create something fun for our people. But I just never asked them what they thought was fun. Isn't it it's always a big,
Yeah, I've
shocking
experienced
moment
this in
for
my
me.
life. People have tried to help me, and they've decided what help looked like, and it wasn't helpful to me.
Yeah.
And then I've discovered the same type of thing that, figuring out what people want is born out of curiosity, taking the time to get to know them and genuinely asking them the question without the answers and listening. And so I'm learning, we talked about the decades in life. I'm learning now, although I do a lot of talking for thought leadership
Yeah.
and presentations, a lot of my time with my clients is spent asking questions and listening. And I listen for the data points that help me understand what I need to do next. And people, one of my clients, he was a professor, 2-time PhD, and he said, I figured you out, Renee. And I'm like, oh no. He's like, you ask good questions, then you say nothing, and then you turn around what I say to you as a solution or an insight, and then I think you're intelligent, but you're just repeating back what I said.
Yeah, you let them
And I'm
answer
like,
their own
yeah,
question. Yeah.
yeah. And so I need to manage my energy. I don't have all the answers. I never will, but I'm very curious to the point of a default sometimes, deficit sometimes.
Yeah.
So when I was asked in the Mastering the Market magazine, what my insights were, and I said, to really just stay curious, ask good questions, listen, stay open, challenge your reality. And if we shut up and listen, we learn. Dalai Lama says that when you speak, you repeat what you already know. When you listen, you learn. I prefer learning.
Yeah.
And so I just think that curiosity is key. We're entering into a new world. The concept of work and business is changing. AI is coming in as a gift with some sharp edges. And I encourage everybody to embrace curiosity as a leadership principle. You're a business owner or a leader or a manager or a supervisor even, curiosity is important. When we slow down and seek to understand, we can form deeper bonds of connection. We can make smarter decisions. We can solve issues faster, and we can achieve great outcomes together.
Well, Renee, I really appreciate you coming all the way in for Vancouver for a few podcast episodes and hanging out with Team EPI. I really appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
And for our audience, we will be back on June 24th. So rolling through the value creator mindset, talking about what makes a better value creator owner, but also what makes a better value creator employee and culture inside of that company as well. So Renee, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And we will be back on June 24th. So please listen and leave a review on all of your podcast platforms. We'll see everybody next time.